Hi, how's it going? I'm Marlena. Thanks for wandering by. So, I'm filming at night when everybody in my house is sleeping or elsewhere. We'll see how it works out. I've got like a mood lighting motif. You know, like I wish I could say that these were just for decorative purposes, but truth be told, this helps me. Just a little behind the scenes bit. This helps me like determine where my frame is. So if nobody told you that before, now you know. So I'm feeling a little bit odd tonight, and so I wanted to do the tag that the three girls did. So Juli from Peekaboo Rose, Sarah from Sunset Bow Tarot, and Heather from, I think her channel is just Heather. Heather are the three girls, and they did a tag called Weird Corner of My Psyche decks. And I totally loved it. I love all their videos, like individually and collectively. So I think they're all really smart and funny and just, you know, lovely, and I enjoy them. So I wanted to take part in this Weird Corner of My Psyche decks. I don't have like as many decks as I usually bring out to show you. I have a few. And you know, I just think it's funny. I have a daughter who's 8, and you may have seen her on my channel before. She takes over sometimes and does readings. But yeah, I think a lot about what weird means now that I'm middle-aged, and like I hit a point in my life where I don't care anywhere near as much as I used to what other people think of the weird parts of my psyche. And I'm trying to, as a mom, like just instill that, like, I don't know, that, well, no, I always say I don't know when I actually do know. I'm trying to instill in her that embracing of the weird parts of herself early on. So hopefully, you know, she doesn't have to go through all of that painful middle school, high school, mostly maybe middle school, I don't know, even elementary school kind of garbage where you, you know, you become ashamed of the things that you like for whatever reason because somebody said that it was weird, and weird is not a good thing. She was just telling me tonight that somebody called her a nerd, and she, you know, had to stood up for herself or whatever. And I was just like, you know, it took me a long time to embrace the term nerd, but now I like wholeheartedly embrace my nerdiness, and yeah, and I'm trying to like instill that in her as well, because I don't know, I do know. God, I keep saying I don't know, you guys are gonna laugh at me. I do know, I just want, yeah, I want her to embrace and relish and like, just, you know, be able to own and enjoy like the things that she enjoys without feeling like there's something wrong about them. And it took me, and I still work on it, but I mean, in middle age, like I really just kind of like, this is the weird shit that I like. So I grabbed some decks that are weird that I think illustrate some things that are weird about me. And I hope you guys enjoy it, because it, you know, help you get to know me and my weird quirks. So first, I'll grab one that's kind of like really different than the others, maybe. I don't know, they're all weird. So the Modern Spellcasters Tarot, and I'll just start showing it to you. This deck, so I don't use this deck as for tarot readings. I use it for spell casting, for workings if I do any, which I've said before. Oh, I edged mine in blue and it was like sparkly at one point. I don't know if I've said this before on here, that I don't identify as a witch, but I do witchy things, I guess, or and I used to when I was a teenager, and I kind of picked it back up in relationship to tarot. So I feel like all these like tarot adjacent things like witchcraft and Kabbalah and like different spiritual things and astrology, some of them I really just want to I really only want to know about or learn about in relationship to the tarot, because I'm passionate about the tarot. But other things I have a desire to kind of dig into, maybe learning more about practices and culture and things like that. Now, this deck is kind of like shows kind of a couple different weird parts of my psyche. The fact that I do, like, I have witchy practices without calling myself a witch might make me seem weird, or it really felt like a weird thing when I was growing up. I was raised Catholic, and I have, you know, family that's like very devout, and then I have family that's kind of just does their own thing. But certainly witchcraft, the tarot, anything in this realm was not like something that my family was okay with or would be okay with. Except now some of them really think it's cool that I do this. Anyway, what was I saying? I'm talking about what about this makes me weird. So I feel like there's a couple of things. So first, that part, that like witchy thing, that witchy thing, when I was in high school, like towards the end of high school was when I was really kind of like deciding, or I really came of age and like kind of was releasing like Catholicism as like an identifying part of who I was and what I believed in. So at that point, I was like trying to figure out what I did believe. And I was always very attracted to candle magic and like whatever I learned about, very, very basic, like just, you know, from friends that were learning about Wicca and beginning to practice Wicca. I never went down that route, but I sort of wanted to, you know, just like find out about this stuff. And I was a poet. I am a poet. And so candle magic and spell writing just felt like totally like normal for me. Like I was just like, I'm just gonna write poems and that's gonna be it. So, okay, so now we've hit upon the cards in this deck that are the other weird part of my psyche. Well, I think that I think is weird. So yeah, so the witchy part of things, the spell casting part of things is, you know, I mean, on TarotTube, I don't think that people are going to find it weird, but in my like sphere of the way that I grew up and the people that I know outside of the tarot community, I'm sure many of you can relate, find this kind of stuff really weird. And you know, now I think that's funny and like, it's, you know, whatever. But sorry if you can hear my dog. He's just walking around licking things because that's what he does. But the other weird part of my psyche that, I mean, so I, like, aside from tarot, one of the other things that I'm really into is comedy. Like, I love stand-up comedy, and I have a weird sense of humor, or at least, I don't know, maybe everybody's sense of humor is so particular, but like, I really love just absurdity is, so like, I love, well, I thought of Monty Python right away with absurdity, but like, I also love I love lowbrow comedy, but I also love really like high kind of pretentious comedy too. I enjoy all kinds of stand-up comics. I love Dave Chappelle. I know he's problematic in some areas, but I love Jerry Seinfeld. I'm a big fan like of different stand-up comics, and my brother and I, we talk comedy all the time because he's a big fan of stand-up comedy. So like, I go through phases where I'll watch like nothing but stand-up. And I love the show Scrubs. That's one of my favorite comedy shows. It's also got a lot of heart and drama in it too. But Scrubs, like the comedy in Scrubs, there's so many different scenes that I could just send to somebody as a video to show them, like, this is, if you think this is funny, like, we can be friends. And that's like, back in the day when you had a MySpace page, you would like put clips of shows, this was before YouTube, and it would be like, well, you would have your top 5 songs, and then you would have like a clip of a show. You could put a clip of a show. And for me to show and identify what my sense of humor was a clip from an episode of Scrubs where, okay, Zach Braff, now I'm going to go off. I'm just sitting here talking, not showing you cards, because I'm going to get to it though, I promise. Because Zach Braff's character, JD, the patient was German, and he didn't speak English, and JD, the doctor, didn't speak German. And so there, Scrubs, if you haven't seen it, has all these like fantasy moments where it'll go into JD, like you go into JD's mind and you see like a fantasy of what he's thinking. Anyway, so the scene is that JD is wishing that he could somehow communicate with his patient, and it cuts to JD, the song 99 Red Balloons, which is an 80s song, and there's a German version of it, and there's an English version of it. Anyway, and there's balloons floating all over the room, and JD and this German dude in his hospital gown are just like dancing to 99 Red Balloons, and it's freaking hilarious. And I mean, and they call back that joke later on in the episode. Anyway, I just that's like my kind of humor. I don't know if you guys will think I'm weird, but I don't care if you do, because I think that stuff is really funny. Yeah, so I love lots of stand-up comedy. I love some sitcoms, and even like ones that kind of everybody loves, like Friends. But I also love, kind of weird random stuff too. I like Jim Carrey. I tend to laugh at I love parody movies. Those are some of my favorite things ever. So things that are so when I see humor and I find comedy, which I have in this deck for some very specific cards like this one, there's another one that's even funnier. It's just it just points out to me, it just reminds me of, who I am in that way, that weird part of my psyche where I just find I really love things that are absurd. And when I got this deck and I was going through it for the first time, so I use it for serious things like spellcasting, but I saw all of the knights are riding animals, and I I didn't immediately assume that the animal was giant, you know, like big enough for a person-sized knight to be riding it. In my weird psyche, I imagined that the knight was small enough to ride on the back of this bird. I don't know what it is, a hawk or something. And there's one with like a fish. I gotta find it now. I'm gonna just show you more of the deck. Oh yeah, and then like this one, the Knight of Pentacles on the back of the squirrel. I don't imagine that this is a giant squirrel. I imagine that this is a tiny knight. And I just think it's freaking funny. Like, I just think it's really funny. And I think I don't know, when I find humor, and I'm not sure if you guys do, because I know, like for the most part, tarot is very serious. Okay, so that one's kind of normal. But there's the trout one, or the fish one, I'll find it. I mean, I know tarot is serious, it's a serious thing for me. And I think we had some fun when we all did the good mood decks thing too. But yeah, like, I mean, like, I guess it's just as absurd if it's a giant salmon. Is that a salmon? What is that? Or a tiny knight. What do you guys think? Is it a tiny knight or a giant salmon? Like, is that funny to you? It's hilarious to me. And nothing else really in this deck is funny. The rest of it is really like the witchy, you know, the witchy spellcasting purposes. But those knights crack me up. I mean, the Magician kind of makes me laugh too. Anytime anybody takes themselves too seriously, it makes me laugh. Okay, so that's the Modern Spellcasters Tarot. And if I'm gonna get through the rest of these, I should probably hurry up. But that was a long story. So the next deck I'm gonna show you is Morgan's Tarot, which is an oracle, not a tarot. And these so far are available mass market. I will always leave links in the description box below to show to tell you where you can find this deck. Why is it backwards? Okay, sorry. So this is the backs, Morgan's Tarot. And I want to say this is, I don't know when it was printed, but it's very 70s, right? It's got a 60s, 70s vibe to it. Now, on the back it says love is God instead of God is love, which is great. So I'm just gonna start flipping through and talking. So I'm a child of the 80s, which means I was a teenager in the 90s. And in the 90s, it was like retro was the 60s and 70s. So what we were doing in the 90s, or I guess fashion was doing, and art and whatever, was like calling back to the 60s and 70s, but putting our new like 90s spin on it. So like when I was in high school, I don't know what kids say now. If any of you are, you know, young, tell me. Like if kids say the term hippie, and if that means something, like what that means to like the younger generations now. But for me, it was like our parents, right? Do wacky do. And so like in the 90s, we were kind of calling back on like kind of hippie like stuff, hippie, you know, fashion and hippie art and that kind of thing. And this deck like exemplifies that. It's so weird, and I love it so much. I showed it to one of my dearest friends, like, and she's not even into tarot, and she got it. She had to get it after I showed it to her, because it like so speaks to this very weird, very specific, weird part of my psyche that reminds me of like being a teenager in the 90s and having this affinity for this kind of like 60s, 70s. For us, for me, that's what retro is, and that's what this makes me think of. It reminds me of like my, you know, my artsy friends. When I was in high school, I used to, you know, like all my friends were writers and singers and artists, and like we all thought we were so cool. Or, I mean, maybe some of us didn't. We were weird. I think we were weird. Like, we weren't like, we were weird kids, I guess. But we were into, you know, my friends were all into like really hippie-ish things, and we would wear corduroy and like, you know, hippie clothes, some of us. Not always. I tried on a bunch of different things, hippie, goth, whatever. But hippie was something that, you know, we totally embraced. My like writer, poet, artist, photographer, musician kind of friends that I had in high school. Nobody here but us folk. Yeah, so this deck, which I use on occasion. I haven't in a while. When I first got it, like last year around this time, I was using it mostly on its own and mostly just one card at a time, because like you get a card like, who am I? And you need like a moment with that, right? It also, I mean, it's funny, but in that really bizarre way, in a very different way than the last, like, absurd. It's absurd, but in a, like, cerebral, absurd way. Not in the same way that, like, a tiny knight riding a tiny squirrel is. It's, like, you know, psychedelic. And I say that like that because you know, it was my aesthetic, but it was, like, an aesthetic that I was, like, trying on for size, you know? But all the cerebral stuff and like philosophical stuff and artsy kind of stuff I really enjoyed. And that's it's just like a weird part of like who I am, where I came from, that like this whole vibe that I really, really like. Okay, so what's next? Let's see. Okay, so let me go, because I've got this one. So this is the Primordial Tarot, and I just got this in the Llewellyn sale, and I have thought about and wanted this deck for some time. It's weird, okay? Let's just say that. It's very weird, but on its own, without even being connected to me in any way. I think it's weird because it's Primordial Tarot. I have not yet worked with it. I'm planning on working with it next month in November, as part of my attempt to kind of work with ancestral work. So these are the backs, and it's probably in order. Yeah, it's in order. So I'll just do that. I don't care if it gets out of order. So how this attaches to a weird part of my psyche. I'm not and never have been a science teacher. But I am obsessed with some science-y things. And one of them is human evolution. And I'm not an expert, like, honestly, here's the weird part of my psyche. The weird part of my psyche is the weird part of me that anytime there's any documentary, PBS, wherever, like those documentaries that teachers used to show you in school when, like, you know, if there was anything ever on, and still now I search them out on like a lazy Sunday, about evolution, dinosaurs, like mostly primordial man. I am so there for it. And I don't know if that's a weird, God, I love this deck. The colors don't align with the elements as I typically know them. So this deck really just kind of does its own thing. So I'm gonna have to spend some time with it next month. But anyway, yeah. So Sundays, like well, I'm going to talk about animals in a minute, but this will segue. And I'm not, like, this is not like my field of study in any kind of way. Like I studied creative writing. Like my undergraduate degree is in creative writing. So like I read lots of poetry and literature and stuff in college. And then I taught lots of poetry and literature and stuff afterwards. So I didn't like study, what's the latest in, evolutionary like findings. Like we found these bones of this oldest human, but now we found these bones of this oldest human. And, and how Homo, all of the different, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens. Like, I know I don't have the right terms, but I just like love this kind of stuff. Also, I just will always I'll just always sit down and watch that documentary if it's on, or I will seek them out. Like there was one, oh my God, now I can't remember the names of any of those documentaries that I loved. I mean, they're probably just like basic, like evolution of man, of mankind or whatever. I love this deck. Like I said, like it's a flip through because I haven't worked with it. So I don't really have like a review of it. Look at this hippopotamus. Anyway, so yeah, so anybody that was ever down to just like sit back and watch, I like alien stuff too, like ancient aliens. So yeah, evolutionary man, dinosaur stuff, ancient man, how we, how when we got all the different technologies as they came to be, fire, writing, whatever. This deck totally speaks to that. Oh, and I was gonna say that I used to love those that series, The Clan of the Cave Bear. The Clan of the Cave Bear. I don't remember a thing about it except the main character's name was Ayla. Yeah, Ayla. I should reread that Clan of the Cave Bear. Maybe I'll get that from the library sometime soon. So yeah, Primordial Tarot, totally speaking to the weird part of me that is like down to watch documentaries on evolution and primordial and ancient man, cavemen, anytime. All right, these last two kind of go together because I was talking about aliens and I was talking about animals. And these two decks kind of answer those things for me. So sorry, my dog is drinking some water and it's right here. So I've shown this deck before. It's the Tarot of the Holy Spectrum. And I showed this deck a little bit before. This is Orion's Animal Tarot. So which one first? Okay, we'll save aliens for last. Let's talk about animals first. So the Orion's Animal Tarot. So I do have lots of animal decks. I'll be showing you my animal decks in a collection series video soon. So here are the backs. I mean, I love animal decks, but this one really speaks to something weird about me with animals is that, like, I love animal decks, but I'm not an animal person. Like, I have a dog. I've always had a dog or dogs. But I'm not like a nature animal lover, like, or at least I'm not out in nature loving the animals. Again, like the evolutionary documentaries, growing up, I was always down to watch like anything David Attenborough. Wild America was one of the shows that was on like Sundays that I would always like to watch. And anyway, so I have a bunch of animal decks that are like animals in like their habitat that seem like, then there's some that are more like anthropomorphized animals. This is like animal, because it's Orion's Tarot, right? So that's the constellation is what I'm, you know, is what I am, and the myth that I'm sure it's referring to, but it's, you know, Orion's belt, blah, blah, blah. It's in space, right? So these are like beautiful portraits or pictures, depictions of animals in the tarot, but it's a spacey background. And so it speaks to a really weird part of my psyche, because this really just makes sense to me about like animals in space. Like I love this background. I'm not really like into being close to animals or working with animals, but I love the idea of learning about animals. Does this make sense to you guys? And space, just because I absolutely love anything kind of space themed. I am more Star Trek than Star Wars though. And I am Battlestar Galactica #1 is really my #1 space show, but I love everything spacey, space stuff. And so like my love of my geeky, nerdy, weird love of like learning like facts about animals and things without like being an animal lover. Cause I'm not just gonna like, if somebody is like around with their pet snake, I'm not gonna be like, oh, can I hold the snake? That's not me. But if there's like a book or I don't know, if someone wants to talk about like snakes shedding their skin and like why, and like that whole, like I love to learn, right? So it's weird. I'm weird that way. I better move faster through this. But yeah, these are like the weird, you know, spacey animals. So like it kind of just has these two kind of ideas. I mean, like, is that a chinchilla? I don't know what that is, but it's really cute. But yeah, like I was always like those new documentaries that are like on Disney Plus now with the amazing like animals at night or the nighttime. Planet Earth, oh my god, that's one of my favorites. I used to put that on when my daughter was a baby, and I would like fold laundry and watch Planet Earth when she was like in her little baby bouncy chair. So yeah, so I think I haven't even shuffled this since I last used it, because I used it in one of my creative writing spreads. But yeah, so animals, not like, I feel like my love of animals is in some kind of weird, non-traditional way. But I don't know, maybe you're weird like me, so maybe you relate. Okay, last one is the Tarot of the Holy Spectrum. So animals in space. And now this just feels like an alien landscape, even though these are not aliens. It's, you know, essentially the Tarot of the Holy Spectrum is a Waite-Smith. I don't want to say clone, but it's really heavily, it's like very clearly Waite-Smith in here. I've shown this deck, so the backs are completely black, and it's this like, I don't know, the texture of this deck is like one of the best things ever. Maybe that's another weird part of my psyche. And it is, I did not edge it. It's fully black all the way around, because you're supposed to feel like you're, you know, staring into the abyss, and then the pop of color is what you get, the spectrum. So this deck feels alien to me. I don't know if, well, and it's spacey. All of the majors are in this like space, you know, theme. I don't know what planet, what it is, right? So yeah, these feel like super bizarre. It feels like post-apocalyptic too, but these do not feel like humans. They're like human adjacent, maybe, like the next evolution of us. But this is one of my favorite decks ever. See, like all the majors have this like, you know, black background and starscape kind of thing. Yeah, but the creatures, the people, I mean, the characters have always felt like super otherworldly to me. Like they don't feel like, oh yeah, this has one black card, completely black. I love that about this deck. This is now available for purchase again, and there's a pre-order for some new editions, which I did order. And when I get it, we'll do comparison. But yeah, like, I mean, some of them have, you know, people clothes and stuff, but just the like people clothes. Human, that's so funny. Human, you know, like obviously that's a knight, right, on a horse. But they seem so alien and so like otherworldly to me, like Mad Max-esque in some cases, you know. Like I said, post-apocalyptic world, but it doesn't, I'm not sure that this is our planet. Like it doesn't feel, it feels not that it, you know, cosmic, but not like super high vibe. It just feels like another dimension, like another post-apocalyptic place, dimension. I don't know, like the Matrix. This always makes me think of the Matrix. I think I've talked about that before. But yeah, it's like super bizarre world. And it really speaks to, it really speaks to a weird corner of my psyche that loves things that are alien. And just like I said, so it's like that whole evolutionary man documentaries. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, is it weird to like documentaries? You out there, you watch documentaries too? But like, I have very specific ones that I like to watch. You know, I don't like, I'm not like some people like historical stuff, you know, so like World War II or war documentaries and things like that. This guy makes me laugh in that absurd way too. But I like very specific things. Animals, aliens, primordial, evolutionary, man, dinosaurs, any of those where they unearth, you know, a dinosaur bones that you've never, you know, that they've never seen before, and then they like computer generate this, they CGI what that dinosaur was, and fur or feathers and blah blah blah. Like I just, you know, I will always on a Sunday, if you want to like hang out with me, that's what we might do. Because I'm weird. But you know, we could also watch Scrubs, rewatch episodes of Scrubs. Okay, that's it. That's the weird part of my psyche. That's the Tarot of the Holy Spectrum. I guess I'll pile some of them back on here. Like we like to do this, right? Do you all like to do this? I haven't seen everybody doing this in a while. Maybe they're over it. Maybe it's not the thing anymore. Oh my gosh, my dog has been licking his paws this whole time. Okay, so everybody's back here. There wasn't too many, although I don't know how long this has ended up being. Probably very rambly, like I do. Anyway, that's the weird part of my psyche, and the decks that illustrate the weird part of my psyche. All right, you guys, I'll blow out my candle. I hope that you all have a beautiful, wonderful night. Bye.